You're all well. This is a bit of a different video. It's Paladin vs Warlock, but it's also a update on how things are looking in the beta, the channel, and all that sort of stuff. So to start this video, you're going to see the start of Ruby Life pools on the beta as the Warlock. The Paladin will be joining us shortly, mainly because every time my Paladin seems to get into this, it's just after the first boss. So there is going to be a slight delay before we start seeing the Paladin stuff. So while we have the Warlock only, let's talk about some of the beta changes to Warlock. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to a lot of people, but Blizzard have, over the last few weeks, have reverted spell lock from being within the talent tree to being a Fell Hunter thing again. So technically we're not actually losing anything because it is currently on the Fell Hunters already on live. It's just not going to transition to the talent tree for us. Now, the Warlock community itself is kind of 50-50 on this. It's, well, it's not a great reversion because the idea behind Blizzard is the whole pets need to matter. It takes away from Fell Hunters, and Blizzard don't think that that's appropriate because of class fantasy. But if you look at it from a logical perspective, Fell Hunters actually bring two forms of utility to Warlocks by having it out, whereas every other pet only has one. So imps have Magic Dispel, or a friendly Magic Dispel, I should clarify. Succubus, Seduction, which is a sap or form of CC. You've got Stun from Felguard, whereas the Fell Hunter or the Observer, depending if you're using a glyph or not, has both a kick and an offensive purge, which means that Fell Hunters get double the utility in any form of group content. And this kind of forces the problem to remain as it is, where in terms of kicks, generally, if you're playing Affliction or Destruction, this doesn't really affect you. You can pick what pet's appropriate for any given moment, but for Demonology, it poses a massive problem still. Because although Axe Toss, the Felguard stun, was changed to be a kick, as a lot of people know, it only acts as a kick if the target is immune to stuns. Not only that, but it has a distinct travel time, which means that for Demonology, your kick might as well be worthless, because if you can stun something, you're going to stun it. And in a situation like that, if you're trying to pull a caster into the pack or create death balls, the last thing you want to do is stun something. Obviously, if it's a dangerous cast and it needs interrupting, then Axe Toss, but that also brings into Axe Toss's travel time. So the reversion isn't great, but sort of understandable. So not too much to say on it. In terms of how Warlock is feeling across the beta at the moment, though, we look promising. Damage numbers are going to need tuning, as you're going to see in the comparison between the Warlock and Paladin in a moment as we transition. And through my Warlock's key, I was with a Ret Paladin anyway, and the Ret Paladin was absolutely stomping. Now, the current theme in the beta at the moment is any melee DPS spec is massively outperforming ranged specs. Tanks are also doing huge amounts of damage. I suspect numbers will be tweaked, but as things currently stand, one of the things that we have is a problem going into the beta, especially if we're trying to test like heroics and things at the moment, because we can't get into the Mythic Pluses yet, is the packs are very much go, 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 which for Warlock specs is problematic because we can't stand there and turret. You could potentially play Affliction and get around some of this, but Affliction runs into the problem of, one, mobs don't live particularly long anyway. That does kind of get mitigated now, thankfully, due to some of the Affliction talents, where we can speed up agony ramp time considerably and we're pretty much constantly spitting shards. But unfortunately, Affliction is also bugged to hell at the moment, and quite a few talents aren't really working. So playing either Demonology or Destruction, we're still fairly immobile. Now, there is a build that I think may work if Season 1 stays the same, where it revolves around generating a lot of imps and basically using imps like your resource rather than shards and relying on demonic core. But I need to playtest that a little bit more, and if it works, great, I'll make a little video on it, and it's a completely degenerate playstyle. But as things currently stand on the beta, melee DPS are doing a lot better. Now, what does this mean in terms of the Warlock versus Paladin thing, as my thumbnail suggests? Well, obviously, Warlock is going to have to remain my raid main, my best, stuff like that. And this is because of, well, one, I'm turning into a better Warlock than I could probably ever be as a Ret Paladin, truth be told. I'm spending a lot of time invested in it and also guild requirements. But if things stay the way they are, it looks like Season 1 may be considerably more forgiving for Retribution Paladins. And one of the reasons for this is because Retribution Paladins, as things currently stand, seem to be getting more utility. And it's utility in the form of a combat res. So Paladins have a castable combat res, which is nice, but this also means that having something like Retribution Aura in Mythic Plus isn't necessarily going to be as detrimental, because you can then benefit from having the wings and a combat res. And at the moment, there is data mine content that Aura of Reckoning, which is currently a PvP talent, may transition into a PvE talent, and in the tooltip it says Greater Blessings, so whether or not Paladins get their blessings back is yet to be seen, but could be something interesting down the road. And if that is the case, then Season 1 promises to be quite nice for us as a channel, because it means not only do I get to play my baby Retribution Paladin and play around a bit, but it also means that my Warlock is going to benefit as well as we push forward into a faster cutting edge. Because obviously we broke a cutting edge for Sepulchre. It'll be nice to get it a little bit faster going into the next expansion. Now, one of the, I think it's probably fair to say at this point that my content has slowed down quite a bit in terms of keys and things like that. Part of that is due to personal things going on my end, so I'm not able to dedicate as much time to doing Mythic Plus keys and stuff like that. And the other is I'm also gearing towards Dragonflight at this point. So there's work being done in the background for some future videos that will be coming up soon, such as Raid Leader's Guide to Professions and things like that. And those are starting to take priority, especially as we start approaching a feasible PTR or pre-patch release date. Because remember, Dragonflight will be released before the end of this year, as things all currently stand. Looks like we're gearing up to that. And due to release cadence and things like that, looking at past expansions, we're probably looking at a November release for the expansion. Probably late November as things stand, which means in October we're going to get pre-patch. And by spending time on the PTR and Dragonflight itself, I'm kind of preparing myself to play the updated classes. Because we are getting new talents and things like that. Which I think is probably going to be more beneficial, especially when it comes to releasing the guides and the content and stuff that you guys really seem to like on my channel. Because the more accustomed I am with the playstyles and the talent trees, the more accurate the information I can give you at a faster cadence, essentially, which is the goal going forward. Because I don't particularly like leaving it 3-4 weeks between guides and videos and things like that. Now, a little bit of an overview in terms of the dungeon itself and how it played. A lot of the beta dungeons currently, especially heroic, are very, very fast paced, and like these keys were done in just under 10 minutes, or dungeons were done in just under 10 minutes, and that seems to be the average at the moment. And I don't know if that is due to things like tank damage, because you have to bear in mind here for the Warlock's key, the Protection Paladin we had was averaging nearly 20k DPS across the entire dungeon, which is ridiculous, honestly. And things like Prot Warriors are even worse. Some Prot Warriors are hitting you know, upwards of 30k DPS, which is what my Warlock's pulling. So dungeons are exceptionally fast. Once we get the Mythic Plus stuff, it will be nice to see. But we do also have a little bit of tank differential. So you're going to see the Paladin is about to do a really large pull, and it kind of feels like I should have pulled a flipping, you know, Goku moment, because I'm having to Divine Shield, Lay on Hands will be used as well, and it's a really, really messy pull. But as you can see, like, Retribution Paladin is rapidly hitting like 80k and climbing upwards. I think I peak at about 103k DPS, which is ridiculous. Like, this is a Retribution Paladin, and a lot of this actually comes from Consecration. Like, the breakdown and the changes, so the Consecration actually is worth pressing, feels amazing. I fully expect it to get nerfed into the ground though, but it will be nice if it becomes a Season 1 mainstay, because it'd be really nice to see this kind of play out and have Ret Paladins really have like an uncapped AoE push, which would be lovely. But that is obviously yet to be seen. Now, this has obviously meant that overall damage has been drastically different in terms of the groups and things like that. But you can see that Warlock is kind of, overall at least, on par with my Paladin for the end of the dungeon. So what does this mean going forward then, to concise everything down into kind of a nice wrap up of this video? Warlock, really, really good spot. They have a tool for every occasion at the moment, whether it be through Destruction, Demonology, or even Affliction, because Affliction's talents and the way Affliction will play when the bugs are fixed puts us in a position where a Warlock will be able to deal with anything. If you're running a group with a certain damage profile, your Warlock can fill the gap. Whether it be a 3-minute burst, 2-minute burst, 1.5-minute burst, a minute burst, or you don't actually need any form of burst and you instead just want consistent level damage throughout the entire dungeon, yep, you got it. You got cleave targets, sorted. Affliction's got it. You need raw single target damage, Demo's your thing. You need to dabble a little bit here and there, Destruction's your thing. Alternatively, Retribution Paladin seems to be in a really, really strong position where it comes to either large-scale AoE through the use of Consecration, or through the typical 2-minute build, and Wings actually feels impactful to the point where it feels like a cooldown, which is really, really nice. So, promises to be a interesting Season 1 if things stay the way they are. I will continue to update you guys as to the progress for the 2 specs, or the 2 classes, sorry, and how they play, while at the same time hopefully eventually getting around to releasing the raid leader's guide to Dragonflight Professions once the vendors are up on the beta, and I can wrap up that, because that's been a long project, as you know, the likes of Wowhead still haven't really released a full profession guide yet, so that'll be nice to do. And we also get into the PTR and the pre-patch, where we can properly sink our teeth into what it's going to be like for a level 60 Demonology Warlock, for example, versus a level 70 Demonology Warlock, and kind of how that will translate. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little bit of a video and a chat. Enjoy the background footage, and hopefully I will catch you all in the next one, and you have a wonderful weekend in the meantime. Take care, folks, and I'll catch you all later.